So I'm going to follow up on the talk that Rod gave. I'm introducing the Torres Strait zogo bakir, or sacred stones, and particularly an element that Rod mentioned, and that is the interplay between local and exotic. I'm going to be focusing on three examples, and then following the theme of this forum, I'm going to then extrapolate wildly and hopefully use some of the ethnoarchaeology work that I've been doing in the Torres Strait to think about some of these broader perspectives. So, as Rod was saying, these stones are extremely common in Torres Strait, particularly in the eastern islands, but they're also found in western and central Torres Strait as well. They're often found in clusters, both circles, and they're standing stones, and they may be accompanied by large amounts of shell. They may also be, they may be shaped in the form of humans or animals. They may be unshaped as well. They may be anointed with coconut oil or turtle grease, also ochre. And sometimes they have design features as well. So it may be that black gum is used to form facial features. They may have skirts of vine stems, or have headlets or bracelets or whatever of goa nuts. As you would have heard from Rod, the purpose of these stones is incredibly varied. And so it's everything from promoting vegetative fertility, to controlling animal life, to controlling winds and rain. They can make people sick or cure them. They were used in ceremonies connected with warfare and funerary practices. They were used as fire charms, and they were representations of mythical figures as well, as Rod was talking about. In Western Torres Strait, you have these fascinating memorial stones that represented figures that were dead. They had painted faces some of the time. And there was also these incredible examples that represented the sky spirits. And so on Erub Island, for example, you have amazing sites where you have Alfred Haddon recorded both a stone that was representing the crescent moon and a stone representing the full moon on either side of the island. There's also other stone arrangements that represent entire constellations on the ground. Now, even though the purpose of these stones may vary substantially, arguably there is quite a consistent structural element to these stone arrangements. As Rod's been talking about, islanders believed, and really they still believe to an extent, that these stones contain this mystery, which is broadly translated as magic or power. And this was extremely dangerous and hard to control unless you were the right person. So in the Eastern Torres Strait, the Zogo Li were able to control these particular stones. The choice of stone was extremely important. This was an explicit expression of the mystery associated with the particular place or people. And so the source of the stone was echoing the clan or buai, the relationships and networks. And so in this way, not only were exotic stones important, but also local stones, because these were all part of a particular network. This was also true, as we've heard, and very interestingly heard from Stuart's talk as well, the use of coral. This was playing on the underwater realms and the fact that you could get mystery from these areas as well, so these underwater realms. The process by which these stones were acquired and then imported was also highly ritualized and structured in the same way. Alfred Haddon, but also Lard and Laurie and many other people who have visited there. There's traditional custodians, elders in Torres Strait to this day talk about this, that the movement of these stones into Eastern Torres Strait was, yes, a very, very important process, and there were rites associated with it. They came with gifts. So Marau, a Torres Strait Islander, told Lad that the food must go with shells and stones. Basically, the Central Islanders brought all of this seafood that was used in feasts connected with the emplacement of these zogo stones. The first case study I'm going to show you is this site here. So this is Tomog Zogo. It's on Mer Island. And as you can see, you've got a combination of both a number of stones, but also large clam shells and trumpet shells and so on. This was located in the middle of the island, in the middle of a bamboo thicket. And according to, so in many of Haddon's informants, and he talked to a lot of people, this is at the turn of the 19th century, about these stone arrangements. Each of these stones represented a particular village on the island or a house. And there was one stone, apart from the rest, that represented the entire island. According to a number of these elders, Passy and so on, this was used as an oracle. So the Zogo Li would go up to this particular site, and if there was someone sick, he would ask the spirits that inhabited these stones who was responsible for this. Should an ant or a lizard come out from one stone and then go back to another stone, then this would tell him about the particular individual that was causing this sickness. And he would go down to the village in question, and through a process of careful inquiry he would approach that particular individual. He would tell that person, according to the stories from elders, that they needed to take out the wiwa stone or sorcery stone, and they would put it in the water, it would be cooled off, and then the patient would recover. There are many other stories about the success of these stones. Another story talks about how a spider in its web foretold a white man's ship coming to the coast of Mer in the direction in which the web was situated. And this was because the web itself looked like the rigging of the ships of these Europeans. Equally, should a stream of ants come from the north of the stone arrangement into the site, these represented Papua New Guinea traders coming towards the island. And if they had eggs in their mouths, this would mean that the men were bringing with them the elongated bundles that contained sago. So moving to the next case study site, this is Dam, also on Mer Island. And this is on the north coast of the island. It's in the Samsep territory, and it's one of the three very important headquarters of the Malo cult. Now, Malo was a very important culture hero, an ancestor of the Meriam people who brought new ceremonies and new songs to Eastern Torres Strait. He came from Papua New Guinea, and he went through the central and central islands mainly, and into these eastern group of islands. And as he came along, according to the stories, he brought the stones from these particular islands. Sure enough, a number of the stones at this site have been observed to be exotic, but there's also local stones, following this idea that local is just as important as exotic in terms of these buoy networks. The initiation ceremonies that happened after the coming of Malo, they would go to this particular site, and the Zogo Li would use these stones as a form of instruction. So they would talk about the journey of Malo based on this mythological geography of sacred stones. And an interesting element Rod brought up as well is the fact that during these particular rites, the songs were sung in the Western Torres Strait language. So this was a language that was shared, and it mirrored the journey of this Malo culture hero. The final case study area is from my own work on Mabuyag Island in Western Torres Strait. This was with Signet Repu and a number of the Wagadagamulgal from this particular region. It's a cod site, another place where initiations took place. Amazing place with fascinating rock art, dugong bone mounds and stone arrangements, including this one here. As you can see, you've got bedrock emerging out of the ground, but people have been chipping away at it and they've smashed off these huge rocks and then arranged it around the central triangular shape. According to Douglas Barney, this represents Mabuyag Island itself, the triangular shape here, and it certainly does look like it. And all of these stones around the edge of it represent the satellite islands. During initiation, the initiated man would basically talk to these stones, and he would talk about the totemic geography. This is where the clans are, and he would point to the particular villages on the island. So this is where I get to the wild extrapolation. So I hope you are generous with me here. I don't expect there is going to be direct parallels to exist between some of the areas that we're talking about here. But then again, I do think that Torres Strait Islanders, as we've already seen from Wayne's talk, there's incredible stories that have resonance for us archaeologists as well. I'm intrigued to start with the prospect that there may be similar occurrences elsewhere where site architecture incorporates these mental maps. And this is as much to do with local as exotic. So looking at the interplay between where these stones are coming from to get a good idea of the ritual geography at a particular time, and also how this changed through time as well. One thing that's really fascinating in Torres Strait is there particular areas that were central in this memory map, so to speak. So Dauan is a really important island, and it plays up again and again in this sacred geography. Are there other contexts where you have similar, so there was prioritizing the stone from particular areas? Maybe this happens in Europe, I don't know. Another thing that I'd be very interested to discuss is a methodological element. So we know that there has been much done about the geochemistry of the exotic stones. I'm very interested in what the deal is with local stones, whether we can look at the exact topography of these particular areas and look at different site complexes. But equally, I'm fascinated about what happens next. So the rites. We can see in Torres Strait that people are bringing the foodstuffs over, and also stone and ochre, basically repeating this mythological geography. Can we see this through isotope analysis and petrographic analysis of the ochres and everything else that's coming along for these ceremonies? And finally, this seems like a ridiculous question at the time, but after Stuart's paper, I think that and Jaden's comment, I think we've got some interesting grounds here. I'm fascinated to look at these sacred stones as complexes. So both the artifacts and the objects that are associated with it, but also the adornments. So we see in Torres Strait how these are created interfaces through ochre and through the gum and all of this kind of thing. Is this something that was quite a unified phenomenon? Is this something, would the information survive, and how might we look at it? And I will leave it at that.